Good evening, everybody. On behalf of Dental Council of India, I welcome all the attendees to this 26th webinar hosted by Dental Council of India. It is a great initiative taken up by Dental Council of India in COVID times, when most of the institutions were shut down. To keep the students engaged, DCI came forward with world-class speakers to deliver lectures on topics of interest of students and practitioners. The lectures were delivered not only to the students, but also to the faculty members and the dental practitioners worldwide. Before starting the webinar, I want to inform all the attendees that DCI webinars are free of cost to all attendees. An e-certificate of attendance will be conferred to all the attendees, including undergraduates, international attendees, and non-dentists. Certificate will be sent to all attendees by email within 3 days of conclusion of each webinar who have attended the entire session uninterrupted. I repeat, it should be uninterrupted attendance of the session. Please check your junk mail just in case you received your certificate there instead of inbox. Attendees may also download the certificates from webinar archives section of DCI website. If anybody has missed any of DCI's webinar, the same can be watched on webinar archives on DCI website. One very important, I request all participants to fill the feedback form that they receive along with their certificates on email. Our seminars are being attended by a large number of participants. Just to announce few top 5 dental colleges who have contributed the most. One is Savita Dental College and Hospital at Chennai, Sri Ramchandra Dental College and Hospital, Chennai, Vishnu Dental College at Bhimavaram, Coorg Institute of Dental Sciences, Coorg, and Genesis Institute of Dental Science and Research, Firozpur. The speaker of today's webinar is Professor Dr. Omkar Shetty. He has graduated and post-graduated from renowned A.B. Shetty Dental College at Mangalore. Currently, he is Dean, DY Dental College at Pune. He is a very dear friend of mine, a true academician, and a renowned prosthodontist. He will be speaking on principles and designing of cast partial denture. The topic is very well selected. I feel it is the weaker aspect of most dentists, since they are busy, they are concentrating more on complete dentures, fixed partial dentures, and of course implants. So it remains. Now, I'm sure with a good designing of cast partial denture, a proper lab support, you will be able to your patient in best of the way. You will get the wonderful results, and I'm sure Dr. Shetty will be able to answer all your queries on cast partial denture designing. I now request Shetty to present the webinar. Dr. Omkar Shetty, please.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, sir, for those kind words. Dr. Swatantra Agarwal himself is a very accomplished prosthodontist who is the principal, professor, and head of Kotiwal Dental College and also an honorable DCI member. He has various other honors under his belt. He's a friend, guide, and mentor to me, and I'm honored to be associated with him. I feel blessed to share the dais with him in today's session. I would like to also thank the Honorable President of Dental Council of India, Officiating Secretary of Dental Council of India, executive members of the DCI, chairman and subcommittee members of the webinar committee, and all the members of the DCI. It is a very valuable and honorable experience for me to be presenting on this platform. The topic for today's webinar is Principles and Designing of Karsh Partial Denture. I bring you greetings from the D.Y. Patil University, Navi Mumbai. As M.M. Diwan rightfully stated, our aim should be perpetual preservation of what remains rather than meticulous restoration of what is missing. It is crucial we know about the designing of a Karsh partial denture to abide by the statement. The thought of having to make a Karsh partial denture may seem frightening to most of you all due to the lack of practice and the fear of the technicalities involved in it. By the end of today's session, we aim to make designing of a Karsh partial denture easy for you. The partial loss of natural teeth impairs mastication, requiring the digestive organs to be overworked. This may result in impaired digestion, systemic disturbances, and general ill health. This then emphasizes the need for replacement of the partial loss of natural teeth to restore function. When there is partial loss of teeth, the equilibrium of the entire masticatory apparatus is disturbed. So, the first step in making a good removable partial denture is a thorough examination leading to proper diagnosis and treatment plan. Pre-prosthetic treatments, including removal of teeth with questionable prognosis, oral prophylaxis, and restoration, should all be completed before embarking onto the evaluation and designing of the partial denture. As you all know, no single design philosophy can be considered as correct over all others. Variations are possible as long as the diagnostic information and good mechanical principles form the basis of your design. As A. Smith in 1953 first laid down the principles for designing of a removable partial denture, stating that the biologic and the mechanical factors that need to be considered while designing of a removable partial denture. There has been little controversy over the design for tooth-supported RPD because no functional motion occurs. Rest may be placed on any teeth capable of serving as suitable abutments. Retentive tips may be located at any as recesses. Design for the extension RPD, on the other hand, have generated considerable debate. It is generally agreed, however, that distal extension RPD should provide broad stress distribution, minimal tooth and tissue coverage by the framework, and retentive arms that either release or flex during the functional movements of the bases. So, what are the biomechanical forces to be considered while designing an RPD? When we look at the chewing cycle, it is seen that multiple forces act upon a process, which tends to dislodge a denture from its basis. These forces can be seen acting in various directions, and the components of the RPD need to resist these forces from either damaging the hard and the soft tissues or the prosthesis itself, and at the same time ensuring that the function of the prosthesis is catered to. One of the most commonly encountered force is in the vertical direction, which causes dislodgement of the denture away from the tissues or towards the tissues, causing injury. The next direction of force is seen in the sagittal plane, causing the lateral or anterior-posterior movements of the dentures. This force causes a lot of pressure, especially on the slopes of the ridges, as well as on the axial surface of the abutment teeth. In class 1, there would be 2 of these on the either side of the arch. The third type of the force that needs to be considered is the torsional force or the rotational force, with its center, as you can all see in the slide, with its center of rotation in the anterior region or the center of the arch. This controls the horizontal movement of the dentures. Of these 3 types of forces discussed, the rotation movement around the fulcrum line or the axis is of the greatest magnitude, but not necessarily the most damaging. The resultant force on the abutment teeth are always in a vertical direction along the apical direction and well taken up by the periodontal ligament. Horizontal or lateral forces seen in the other 2 types of forces, though of lesser magnitude, can be destructive to the supporting structures of the teeth as well as alveolar ridge, if not countered. Now coming on to the most common mechanical forces that play on the removable partial denture and why we should know about it. First is the lever principle or the lever and the fulcrum principle, wherein you have to consider the load that is acting on the dentures and the resultant effort required to counter that load and the fulcrum around which these are rotating. The second would be the inclined plane principle, working on all the rests and the retainers, basically which says that as the angle of the incline increases, the force required to pull an object up the plane also increases, since the object comes closer to the actual weight of it. So let us try to understand the various types of levers that are working on a removable partial denture. In the first class lever, where the fulcrum is in the center and the load and the force are on the opposite side, they are usually balanced against each other. This is one of the most efficient and easily controlled lever. Classical example of this lever is a seesaw. The second class lever, in which the fulcrum is on one side and the load is in the center and the force on the other. This type is seen as indirect retention, which we normally give in our removable partial dentures. The example for this type of lever is the wheelbarrow. And the third type of lever or the third class lever is has force in the center and the load and the fulcrum on the opposite sides. The example for this would be a fishing rod. The following are the biologic factors needed to be considered during the planning of a CPD. Try and understand that more the number of missing teeth, longer is the edentulous span. Hence, the cantilevering will be more and more is the leverage of forces on the abutment teeth. A large and well-rounded ridge with well-keratinized tissue on it will have better stress distribution than would a knife-edge ridge. And when there is the thick mucosa of more than 2 millimeters, within 2 millimeters it is still okay, but more than 2 millimeters, then the load on the abutment teeth increases. Coming to the biological factors that need to be considered during designing, first comes the class design. Ensure that when you design a class, it should be passive. Various factors affecting the class design, like the length of the class, material of the class, cross section, diameter, and the taper of the class, should be taken into consideration. the force of tipping given by the retentive arm is normally countered by the reciprocation on the opposite side of the same tooth. The reciprocal arm should be supporting the tooth throughout the time that the retentive arm is active. As we all know, occlusion is the key to all success in any process. Any deflective contacts will lead to the dentures being subjected to diagonal forces as well as destructive and imbalanced forces on the tissues. Hence, occlusal harmony is of utmost importance. Coming to surveying, I'll not go into the details of surveying, but I'll just touch upon it. Surveying is very important since it's essential to understand which components of the CPD can be effectively utilized in which part of the arch. It also helps us outline the path of insertion and removal, choosing the material for the clasp, modifications of tooth wherever required, for proper placement of the various components for its efficacy. While designing the RPD, all efforts should be taken to minimize the forces acting on them by selecting the various components for stress equalization and distribution. Coming to the denture bases, the denture bases should be designed to have an accurate adaptation so as to have broad stress distribution and good retention. Denture flanges should be made as long as possible to help stabilize the dentures against the horizontal movement. Extension into the retromolar pad in the lower and the maxillary tuberosity should always be done. During designing of the denture bases, remember, large bases are generally safer. Ensure that the polished surfaces of the dentures are smooth and margins should end in the depressions on resilient tissues. Enough relief should be given to the free gingival margins of the adjacent teeth so as to not impinge them. Use denture based materials which can be relined in future so that in case there is excessive resorption, we can still utilize the same denture within certain limits. The neutral zone concept, which is normally seen in complete dentures, should also be utilized in the cast partial dentures. The neutral zone philosophy is based upon the concept that for each individual patient there exists within the denture space a specific area where the function of the musculature will not unseat the denture and where forces generated by the tongue are neutralized by the forces generated by the lips and the cheek. Coming to the major connectors, which is one of the most important parts of the component of the complete cast partial denture. Major connector is that part of the CPD which joins all the components together. The basic design principles to be followed while designing a major connector are: ensure that the borders of the major connectors should be at least 6 millimeters in the maxillary and 3 to 4 millimeters in the mandibular, away from the free gingival margins. The borders should be as far as possible parallel to the gingival margins. Maxillary major connectors should cross the palate at right angles. Curves in the connectors should be placed on one side of the midlines. Minimal coverage of the anterior palate so as to aid in speech. Adequate relief should be given around tissues of the mandibular major connectors so as to not impinge on the movable floor of the mouth, associated freni, or the mandibular tori. Tooth supported RPD with little or no relief is needed, but for distal extension, relief usually has to be given. These are the various major connectors which are commonly used in the maxillary: the single posterior palatal bar or the strap, depending on the case, the palatal plate, anterior posterior palatal bars, horseshoe shaped palate plate, or the closed horseshoe also, the complete palate. In the mandibular, we have the lingual bar, the lingual plate, we have the lingual bar, the double lingual bar or the Kennedy's bar, as well as the labial bar. Each has its own indications and contraindication, and depending on each case, you will have to choose according to the requirements of the case and the various other requirements that we have stated above. To aid in better stress distribution by the major connectors, the following principles need to be incorporated. You have to understand that there are the various principles of physics that can be incorporated to ensure that there is better stress distribution by the major connector. One of them is the L-beam effect, which is seen in closed horseshoe or the anterior-posterior palatal strap. In this, the metal configured in two planes increases the resistance to flexing. Also, the anterior border of the maxillary major connector ends in the slopes of the palate, giving a circular configuration. Coming to the occlusal rest, whenever the RPD is loaded with occlusal force, two structures can take up the load. One of them is the soft tissue and the other is the tooth. Rests on the tooth help if favorably distributing the stress and also reducing the resultant stress on the soft tissues. Rests, when properly designed, ensure a positive vertical stop for the prosthesis. The different types of rests that you need to that you can design is occlusal rest, cingulum rest, and incisal rest. While designing an occlusal rest, you have to ensure that it's triangular shape with the apex towards the center of the tooth and the base towards the marginal ridges. It should be half the buccolingual width. It should be 1/3 the mesiodistal width. The angle between the floor of the prosthesis and the proximal surface of the tooth should be less than 90 degrees. It should be, this is the way the angle should be. And it should be 0.5 mm thick at the thinnest point and 1 to 1.5 mm thick at the margins. The design for the lingual or the cingulum rest is that it should be 2.5 to 3 millimeters in the mesiodistal width, 2 millimeters in the labiolingual width. It should be 1.5 millimeters deep with the V-shaped notch. The V-shaped notch, the labial inclination should be parallel to the labial surface and the lingual inclination perpendicular to the labial incline. The apex of the V should always be directed incisally. Positioning of the occlusal rest on the abutment teeth is also important. Although the rest location varies considerably, depending on the configuration of the remaining teeth, some generalization can be made in it. In tooth-supported removable partial dentures, rests are usually located adjacent to the edentulous area, thus avoiding additional major connector and gingival coverage. In extension RPDs, rest location is intimately related to the design and the function of the clasp assemblies employed. However, as a general rule, the primary rests are usually located away from the extension areas. In this way, the torquing of the abutment tooth during function can be minimized. The total inherent retention of the RPD is obtained from 1. The denture style retention, which is based on adhesion, cohesion, and interfacial surface tension. The frictional retention from the guide surface plate contact. And third is the mechanical retention from the clasp, that is your direct retention. The reciprocation should always start from the retentive arm, and when the retentive arm gets active, it should be continuously preventing the movement of the tooth when the retentive arm moves in and out of the infrabulge area. The clasp should provide bracing and reciprocation support as well as retention. All the clasps should fulfill the biological as well as the mechanical requirements. The clasp can be divided into gingerally approaching and occlusally approaching depending on their origin. Normally, in a cast partial denture, a clasp assembly consists of a retentive arm, a reciprocal arm, and a rest. All the clasp assemblies should satisfy the 6 requirements, that is, of retention, support, stability, reciprocation, encirclement, and passivity. There are 3 parts of a clasp arm: the shoulder, the body or the midsection, and the retentive tip. Only the retentive tip is supposed to be kept below the survey line or into the undercut. Retainers are to be based on the mechanical principle of having better retention when the clasp is positioned in or below the middle third of the tooth. As you can see from the slide, the fence post can be moved easily from the top rather than when pushed closer to the ground. Similarly, when the clasps are placed below the middle third as seen in diagram B, it has better retention than when as seen in diagram A. Strategic clasp positioning is a method of stress control. The tripod, the quadrilateral and the bilateral configurations are the way we can position the clasp. The quadrilateral configuration of the clasp is the most advantageous mechanically. It creates a stable situation in which the leverage is effectively neutralized. It is usually seen in Kennedy's class 3 type of arches with a modification, and or you can use it without the modification areas also. In class 2 arches, if there is a modification space on the contralateral side, the teeth anterior and posterior to the contralateral side can be clasped. If not, then one clasp can be placed or positioned as far anterior as possible, and one clasp can be placed as far posterior on the contralateral side with aesthetics, space, and tooth contours in mind. Although the tripod will not be as effective as the quadrilateral configuration, it does help in neutralizing some amount of leverage in class 2 type of Kennedy's classification. In class 1, however, the bilateral configuration can only be used. In this, most posterior tooth is clasped. This clasp exerts little or no neutralizing effect on the leverage-induced stresses, and they have to be controlled by other means like the indirect retainers. The direct retainers, you have to understand that the form of the direct retainer depends on various factors like the position of the tooth, the condition of the tooth, the position of the edentulous area, the axial inclination of the abutment, and the position of the occlusal rest. The condition of the tooth, if the tooth is periodontally weakened or there is grade 1 mobility or more than grade 1 mobility, we may not be able to use that tooth, and we go to the next sound tooth, which is giving us enough support for our clasp and the other components that is required. The position of the edentulous area, whether it's class 1, class 2, whether there's a modification area or other things that need to be taken care of. Axial inclination of the abutment also changes the way the clasp design is. In case the tooth is lingually tilted, then we may have to take care of it by choosing some other clasp design like the ring clasp or the half and half clasp or other things. The position of the occlusal rest also determines the clasp. Understand that the simplest of the clasp that can be designed should be utilized when you are thinking of the direct retainer designs. Based on the position of the retentive undercut, which was the first point in the last slide, if the undercut is on the distobuccal side, then a reverse circlet clasp can be used. If the undercut is on the mesiobuccal side, a combination wrought wire clasp or an RPI class can be used. If it is on the distolingual side, whenever the tooth is tilted lingually, an RLS class can be used. If you want, you could also use precision attachment to retain a class 1 type of partial dentures. But however, whenever you are using precision attachment, a stress breaker should always be used. RPI class was a modification given instead of using just a plain gingivally approaching class for distal extension. Kroll and Kratovich came up with something called as RPI class. They basically modified the type of, this is a basically modified type of Roche's class, which is designed to reduce the tooth contact. The RPI in the RPI class stands for rest, proximal plate, and eye bar. The RPI class, in this, the eye bar is preferably not placed in the distal undercut because it cannot move freely away from the tooth, producing a talking force on the tooth. The placement of the eye bar either in the greatest prominence, that is on the center of the tooth, or on the mesial end permits the eye bar to move under functional load. The positioning of the guide plane also changes the center of the rotation. As you can see in the diagrams of A, B, and C, there is excessive force either on the tooth or on the proximal plate or on the eye bars. And in A and B, you can see that there is no contact of the proximal plate, leading to wedging action and a collection of food in the free gingival margin. The D diagram, as you can see, when the guide plane is properly seated or placed, the center of rotation is in between around the guide plane, thereby making it favorable for our clasp to be in proper action as required during the design. The RPI class, which is basically a combination of the RPI system and the ACUS class, can also be used in certain cases wherever and whenever required. The proximal plate drops gingivally and slightly mesially as the rotation occurs in an RPA class. Combination class. This is also a preferred system for a mesiofacial undercut in the distal extension RPDs. This helps in reducing the stresses transmitted to the abutment. It consists of a cast reciprocal arm, a wrought retentive arm, which is more flexible due to its cross section and internal structure when compared to a cast circumferential class. The circular cross section allows it to flex in any direction and distribute the stresses in multiple planes. The fulcrum line that you need to understand is already been discussed, as you know, but we have discussed three types of fulcrum line which are present in a partially edentulous cases, of which one of the most important is the fulcrum line passing through the distal most abutment that is seen in the partially edentulous cases. This type of fulcrum line needs to be countered since the other movements around the two fulcrum lines is taken care of by the design of the bases. The movement around this fulcrum line needs to be countered by placing indirect retainers, employing the lever principle, and when these indirect retainers are placed further away from the fulcrum line, it requires less resistance to stabilize the restoration against rotation. The most commonly used indirect retainer is the occlusal rest or the canine rest. There are also canine extensions when the premolars need to act as a primary abutment in class 1s or class 2s. Also, you can have other indirect retainers like the continuous lingual bar retainer in Kennedy's class 1 and class 2 cases. Roux support you could be having in the maxillary Karsh partial dentures. You could also have indirect retention from the major connectors. Whenever you are using the continuous lingual bar or the lingual plate type of retainers, make sure that the bar is placed above the middle 1/3 as is shown in the diagram to prevent unwanted tooth movement or orthodontic movement of the tooth. When to use an indirect retainer? In Kennedy's class 1, in Kennedy's class 2, these require indirect retention because the distal extension partial denture, there's a lot of lifting movement or the tissueward movement whenever the pressure force is there on the distal extension area. Hence, indirect retainers are a must in class 1 and class 2. In class 3, since it's a tooth supported Karsh partial denture, you will not require an indirect retainer. The class 4s also, which is something like a class 1, will also require indirect retention, which is given by the distal most occlusal rest that is designed in the class 4 type of Karsh partial denture. Factors affecting indirect retention. The effectiveness of indirect retention retainers is in proper identification of the primary fulcrum line, which is the line passing from the distal most abutment, as we have spoken time and again. The greater the distance from the fulcrum line, the more effective is the indirect retention. The indirect retainer needs to be placed perpendicular and as far away from the fulcrum line as possible. The direct retainer should also prevent the denture bases and the rest from being lifted from the tissue. The indirect retainers and the denture base should be rigid enough to resist flexing. Otherwise, the forces would be multiplied instead of being dissipated. Confusion still exists whether the lingual plate acts as an indirect retainer. However, if support is given on both the sides of the lingual plate with a cingulum rest on the canines or the occlusal rest on the premolars, it can greatly increase the efficiency of the primary indirect retainer. Minor connectors. Minor connectors are rigid elements that connect the primary rests, indirect retainers, clasp assembly, and the denture bases to the major connector. By rigidly connecting the components of an RPD, minor connectors contribute significantly to load transfer and broad stress distribution. In addition, major and minor connectors are instrumental in transferring the effect of the retainers, rests, and the reciprocating components around the arch. Properly designed minor connectors also contribute to horizontal stabilization, reciprocation, and encirclement. They are positioned in the interproximal spaces and must not interfere with the normal anatomic contours or the opposing occlusion. Always avoid convex surfaces to design a minor connector. You should always connect onto the major connector with the minor connector at right angles so that the gingival crossing will be abrupt and cover as little as possible. Minimum of 4 to 5 millimeters should be present between the adjacent minor connectors. Tooth selection for the denture is basically depending on which part of the denture is being replaced. If it's an anterior teeth replacement, then usually the acrylic teeth, porcelain teeth, reinforced acrylic pontics or tube teeth can be used. If it's the posterior teeth replacement, then there is porcelain teeth, metal teeth, acrylic teeth, metal teeth with acrylic windows, which could be used. But the preferred tooth is usually acrylic with the corresponding acrylic denture bases. The remaining the remaining types of teeth, like the porcelain teeth and all, require additional retention methods to retain it to the denture bases. Now, after understanding what are the various types, what are the various requirements for designing, I will just give you a run through for the various designs for individual Kennedy's classification. However, there will be variations if modification exists, but the basics for all these designs will still remain the same. For Kennedy's Class 1, a direct retainer is essential. The position of the undercut determines the type of the retainer, whether it is gingivally approaching or occlusally approaching. Two clasps are given on the terminal abutments bilaterally. Following the bilateral configuration, rests are to be prepared on tooth with maximum support. Minimum two indirect retainers are to be given. Major connectors like palatal plate, complete palate, horseshoe, closed horseshoe for the mandibular lingual plate, lingual bar, and double lingual bar could be utilized. This is something that could look like in the for Kennedy's Class 1. Of course, there should be an indirect retainer every time that you design a Kennedy's Class 1, which would be probably in the mesial surfaces of the premolars or the canines. In case these two teeth are not available for indirect retention or they are weakened, then the entire anteriors could be taken in, and you could probably have a closed horseshoe type of major connector. Kennedy's Class 2, while designing for such type of Kennedy's Class 2, we require a direct retainer with the position of the undercut, which again determines, like in Class 1, where either gingivally approaching or occlusally approaching. 3 retentive clasps are required, one like we all know on the edentulous side and 2 on the dentulous side. If there is a modification area, then one clasp anterior to the modification area and one clasp posterior to the modification. It should follow the tripod configuration. Rest should be placed as usual with the teeth with maximum support. Indirect retainer, you could have one indirect retainer which could be placed on the dentulous side. Like I have always told, that it should be across the fulcrum line and as far as possible from the fulcrum line. And the major connector could be horseshoe shape or closed horseshoe, anterior posterior palatal bar, strap, and a lingual bar in the lowers. This is how we could probably design for the lowers. Class 2 mod 1. You could probably also have an indirect retention in the canines to help us, or you could probably have a double lingual bar or the lingual plate following the tripodal configuration. The Kennedy's Class 3, the direct retainer position of the undercut is not very critical in designing the processes, since no damage to the abutment is usually done. 4 clasps should be placed for quadrilateral design. In case of modification for Class 3, indirect retainers are not required, like we all know by now, and single posterior palatal bar, palatal strap, and lingual bar can also be utilized as a major connector. This is the diagram which would show you for Kennedy's class 3 mod 1 following the quadrilateral configuration. Kennedy's class 4 is basically reverse class 1 types, wherein the class should be placed anteriorly and posteriorly as far as possible to get the quadrilateral configuration. Preferably, if aesthetics allows, it could be placed on the anterior teeth adjacent to the edentulous side, and posteriorly you could have embrasure class as shown in the diagram. 4 class could be placed, indirect retainer to be placed along with the posterior embrasure class that is placed. Coming to digitalization and removable prosthodontics. Nowadays, with digital dentistry making waves in every part of prosthetic planning and construction, cast partials can also be designed virtually and printed using the 3D printers. First, the scanning can be done using either an intraoral scanner and or an extraoral scanner. Scanning of the model could be done at the lab level. A virtual model is prepared on which the entire planning of the RPD is done. This can be later on designed using the exocad software and then printed. If a resin model is made, it can be then used for casting in metal directly by using the usual casting method. So this is the way the exocad material is scanning, exocad designing is made. And this is how the final cast partial framework will be. To summarize, there are a few basic requirements in a partial denture design that must be met if the restoration is supposed to function adequately and with comfort for the patient. First is the support, second is the stability, third is the retention, and fourth is aesthetics. The sequence that follows is recommended as a starting point because it tends to encourage a logical and systematic process. Selection of the abutment and surveying is the first step. Location of the rests, location of the guiding planes should be made. Selection of the major connector, placement of the minor connectors, selection of the retentive components, bracing and reciprocative elements should be then selected. Placement of the denture bases, retentive elements, and last but not the least, selection of replacement teeth. The sequence used for the development of the design is like the design itself, subject to some variations. The experienced dentist will in fact make the decisions regarding several steps and elements concurrent. His or her mind will function like a computer, switching between steps as the situation demands. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Honorable President Sir, Dental Council of India, Officiating Secretary of Dental Council of India, and the webinar committee for this beautiful platform they have made for knowledge sharing. Dr. Virendra Goyal sir, words would not be enough to thank you, sir, for hand-holding me and taking me through the entire process patiently. Rangarajan sir, for all the support you have given me throughout my career. There are many people who tirelessly work behind the scenes to make this all happen. One such person is Shri Mukesh ji, Deputy Secretary of DCI, who has been coordinating and working hard behind the scenes. Thank you, Mukesh ji. I would also like to thank the IT team of the Dental Council who have been coordinating this entire webinar process to ensure seamless transmission of the entire webcast, and all others who have helped in this webinar. Wishing everyone a very happy Holi. Stay safe and stay blessed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Omkar, for such a wonderful presentation. I have received number of questions. Audience was very enthusiastic about asking. I have selected only few questions which I would like to share with you, and expect that you will solve their queries. First is, what will come first, rest seat preparation or guide plane contouring, since rest preparation comes first in sequencing?
Okay, sir. That's a very nice question. If we prepare the rest seat and then we go on to guide plane preparation, what happens is the rest seat that we have prepared, some part of it might be taken away while preparing the guide plane surfaces. So it is preferred to do the guide plane preparation first and then go on to the rest seat preparation.
Another question is, what are indications for onlay clasp? Also, will there be supraeruption of the concerned tooth when patient is not wearing the denture?
Okay. Onlay clasps are normally indicated, sir, when the occlusal surface of certain teeth that are being replaced are lower than the occlusal surface of the remaining teeth. So an onlay clasp is given on those teeth which are below the occlusal surface, and in case an onlay clasp is used for the short duration of time that the onlay clasp that the cast partial denture will not be placed in the oral cavity, the teeth will not tend to supraerupt. So it is not a big issue of the cast partial denture being out of the oral cavity for the short duration that we normally advise the patient to take it out, especially during the night time. The onlay clasp will ensure that the occlusal forces are transmitted onto the tooth that are below it and ensure that there is no supraeruption of the teeth.
Good. Another very good question is, can a cast partial denture be indicated in recently extracted region where healing has happened about 60%?
In these cases, yes, you could, but then there would be a problem of relining it at an earlier stage. If it's a tooth supported cast partial denture, then it would be lesser. In a distal extension, it would be more so, because the posteriors, in the posterior region, there would be more amount of resorption that is caused, and relining would be difficult if any of the denture bases that cannot be relined are used. Hence, in such cases, acrylic type of base should be used, and if it's possible, wait till the healing completes for a distal extension cast partial denture.
One of the participants is asked, what is a half and half clasp? Where are they indicated?
Okay. A half and half clasp is basically indicated when there are lingually tilted teeth. So you have the buccal part which goes on from the guide plane, and the lingual part which comes on from the rest seat or the minor connector that is on the mesial surface. So like I have already mentioned during the direct retainer selection, that there should be 180-degree encirclement. So this basically half and half clasp helps in this 180-degree encirclement, and the retainer arm is the lingual part and the bracing arm is the buccal part. So always remember that in half and half clasp, the buccal part comes up from the guiding plane, and the lingual part, which is the retentive arm, comes from the minor connector which is placed on the lingual undercut.
One very question of interest. Sir, with implants being used in large scale, what is the relevance of dental implants in designing cast partial denture? Should the principles used for designing need to be modified? If so, what are the changes?
Okay. If you are using implant supported cast partial denture, then it would mean you will be using retentive elements which are other than the tooth as such. However, if all the retention is going to be with the implants, then it would mean a lot of force going on to the implant surfaces. Hence, the designing of the cast partial denture along with the implant support, that is, the implants will give you extra retention with the O-rings or with the type of additional retention for the implant from the implants. The remaining principles of the cast partial denture designing need to be followed.
Good. One more question I will like to ask from one of our audience is, in preparing occlusal rest, what if the tooth is treated already? Tooth is already treated and you want to go give an occlusal rest.
Okay. So if the tooth is treated and is still in occlusion, then whether you need to prepare a rest seat which will just leave it at that, or you could probably give a crown on top of it with the rest seat incorporated in it. But whenever you are giving a crown with the rest seat incorporated in it, you have to ensure that the preparation is also allowing you that much of thickness, for minimum thickness that is required for the restorative material to be below the rest seat. So you will have to prepare the tooth accordingly whenever a crown with a rest seat is incorporated or modifications of the tooth need to be done to for our cast partial denture components to be adjusted in that tooth.
There were a lot of on flexible dentures, but since it is not the part of this domain, I have not selected the questions being asked for flexible dentures. Thank you, Dr. Omkar, for answering the questions in such a nice way. I once again would like to announce the name of 5 dental colleges with highest participation in the previous webinar. Since it becomes my duty, because they're always attending, and we want to encourage other colleges also to come up, like these colleges: Savita Dental College and Hospital, Chennai; Shri Ramchandra Dental College and Hospital, Chennai; Vishnu Dental College, Bhimavaram; Coorg Institute of Dental Science, Coorg; Genesis Institute of Dental Sciences and Research, Firozpur. Dear friends, I will like to inform that next webinar will be on 11th April 2021. Topic will be oral habits in children, clinical aspects and management. It will be delivered by Dr. Nikhil Marwaha, Professor and Head, Mahatma Gandhi Dental College at Jaipur, and moderator will be a very dear Dr. Indra Kumar Pandit, Principal, DAV Dental College at Yamunanagar. He was also the past Secretary of Indian Society of Pediatric and Preventive Dentistry. Please make sure it is on next to next Sunday, not immediate Sunday. It will be after 15 days, that is on 11th of April 2021. I am thankful to President Dental Council of India, Dr. Bharat Shetty, Executive Committee, Webinar Subcommittee, and Officiating Secretary of Dental Council of India for giving me this opportunity to share the platform with Dr. Omkar Shetty. I am thankful to Dr. Virendra Goyal and Mr. Mukesh, Deputy Secretary, Dental Council of India, who are of all the help in organizing such a wonderful event. My sincere thanks to Dr. Omkar Shetty for such a wonderful presentation and such nice question and answer session. I am sure all our attendees must be benefited with the presence of Dr. Omkar Shetty. On behalf of Dental Council of India, I am thankful to all the attendees present and encouraging us to plan many more such webinars on this platform. Your presence is an encouragement, and I wish more and more number of people should register themselves on the website. So, see you again on 11th April 2021. Since then, happy Holi, play safe, remain healthy, and keep distancing. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.